What is good, NIO family? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And this one I want to talk about something very important that's going on with the Chinese economy. We just saw Evergrande fall very, very hard, and this led to lots of concerns involving many Chinese tickers. And as a result, we started to see NIO slide with this news coming out. So I'm going to break down more important details about this, talk about what the data is suggesting for NIO, and then break down something very important about it from a technical standpoint. But before I do anything like this, before I get into any more details about this Evergrande situation, let me just mention a couple of things. I'm firstly not a financial planner, so make sure you take none of this as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo, the link down below, and deposit $100 into the account, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks with a $50 cash reward. The offer ends in just about 13 days, so check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. All right, so NIO's down 7.22% for the day, taking a massive hit once again. And I warned you guys about this yesterday that we could see more downside looking at the gaps on NIO, not to mention the technicals. I was talking about this 10.7 area. I'm sure you guys remember me calling that out. And NIO actually closed and hit a low of 10.6, very close to what we were expecting. But the thing about NIO is, I want to just ask you a question, okay? If we time travel just about 2 weeks ago, what was NIO doing? 2 weeks ago, NIO was pumping really hard. People were getting so excited about the stock. They were talking about how bullish it was with all this data coming out with very, very strong deliveries. You guys remember that? It got this monstrous pump. It dropped a little bit, then it just continued to pump, right? It just kept going and going and going, and we saw NIO break this high. NIO was due for a technical pullback after forming a bearish divergence, and NIO started pulling back again and again just a little bit, but it was completely healthy in the very beginning. But then what happened was we started getting lots of negative news, at least for the whole market, because the whole market started cooling off in August. So the whole market started cooling off as we had some negative Fitch ratings. We had some new downgrades that came out. We had some hawkish tones from the Fed. We had all this negative news that was coming out, shifting sentiment in the market from very greedy to more neutral, and we're getting very closer to like fear on the fear and greed index. So the market started slowing down, which is dragging NIO down. But then we all of a sudden get more news involving China that's more concerning, involving what's going on with exports and import prices. They're not really meeting demand. And what else is important is the Chinese economy is starting to show more signs of contraction. Now, with all of this going on, NIO started sliding even more. And as the market bounced today, at least got a small bounce, especially because of Apple dictating the US stock market. Many companies like NIO continued to slide to the downside. NIO is still coming down, not because the company is fundamentally weak, not because so much changed from 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, this thing was pumping. Okay, people were excited about the company. It's not because of that. NIO did nothing wrong to cause this fundamentally. You have to think about that. Imagine Tesla was pumping and pumping and pumping. It's also down pretty hard too. Look at the last couple of weeks. Tesla has been tanking. It went from almost 300 a share. Now it's only at 212. It came down for the last couple of weeks. Is it because Tesla's a bad company? No. It wasn't Tesla's fault entirely. Yes, they did not have the strongest guidance for Q3. That did play a role in this, but it's not just that. There are external factors that affect these companies. So with all this going on, there's another big piece of news that came out just yesterday involving Evergrande. Basically, Evergrande is the second largest property developer in all of China, basically. And this basically had lots and lots of debt because of the fact that, once again, there were lots of promises that were made that couldn't be kept. I'm just going to keep it simple like that. And to add on to that, many of the American companies out there, especially hedge funds, continued to pour money into Chinese bonds. Okay? The US is heavily invested into China. That's one thing a lot of people forget. Billions upon billions of dollars. Now, these hedge funds, these other individuals, these different funds, they use Chinese money as collateral when positioning, right? When taking positions. And in doing so, when there's news like this coming out, it is going to have a very negative effect on the US as well. That's part of why the US stock market sold off hard yesterday. But what's happening is with these issues, not only did this affect the US, This is also going to affect Chinese tickers big time because there are lots of these fears and concerns about the economy, the lack of demand. There's fear of contagion amongst the banks right now. A lot of people are just losing faith in the banks, and people are starting to just try to save up their own money on their own. So it's becoming a lot more difficult over there. They're entering what I believe to be a more severe recessionary environment than that of the US, unless the US is yet to see something like this. And some of these issues are similar to that of 2008, as lots and lots of people over there were continuing to invest in real estate, seeing it as a very, very strong economic hub for asset growth and etc. This is now becoming important because with all this demand for housing, it was very hard for these developers to keep up with it, keep different promises, and simultaneously maintain what it is they had to do. So, with this bankruptcy coming out from Evergrande, this is leading to more concerns amongst other developers, the banks, and then the bonds holders here in the US, and also other Chinese companies. This is a big hit for the Chinese economy, and it is very unfortunate, right? Because you have to remember who gets affected the most. The people, the everyday people, do get affected a lot by this. Uh, it really hurts them, and my heart goes out to innocent people who do not have bad intentions, who just want the best for people who are trying to live their lives. So it's hard. It really is. I just want to talk about this. This was not Neo's fault. This was not Neo doing something horrible. This is not Neo doing anything fundamentally wrong. This is just out of their control. And when things like this happen, there's some fear about dropping demand in the entire economy. We even saw Tesla cut prices again. And with all these fears, they're just coming together and making things even harder for Chinese tickers, unfortunately. So despite that, Neo had about 65 million in volume, so it's dropping on not so crazy high volume, but it's continuing to look relatively weak, despite what they're saying about their new pathways and expansions to countries like Sweden. Things are still not looking that great from a fundamental. I mean, not fundamental. Sorry, from a technical standpoint, the fundamentals are still fine. It looks like we're approaching this low right here. So we just came down to this like 10.7 area. We could see it drop a little bit more to like 10.2 before getting some kind of bounce, but there should be a bounce coming very soon, either from here or around 10.2. We're going to be watching what news comes over the weekend and see what happens with the technicals. On SPY, it looks like it could be making an attempt to bounce, but what else could help it would be Nvidia's earnings. Nvidia has earnings approaching very soon, and this thing, Nvidia stock may start bouncing, approaching it, which could help SPY hold up. And if that's the case, if the whole market holds up, we could see more upside. If that's the case, we could see SPY get closer to 438. If that breaks, 440 is on the table. And if that's the case, right, that could also help the market reverse. For Tesla, it's trying to curl after forming a bullish divergence. We could see Tesla make its way back up to 220, but we're going to be watching what news comes out just to be safe. And then finally, to add on to this, for the QQQ, the same thing is going on. We got a nice bounce. Looks like it wants to make its way back up to this imbalance at like 261. So the market looks very bouncy, at least for the time being. But don't forget, Jerome Powell is going to speak later this week at Jackson Hole. And then we also have like consumer inflationary expectations and NVIDIA's earnings. If NVIDIA starts pushing, the market could push with it. But then after earnings, if it gets a big rug pull, the whole market could get a rug pull too. So you have to be very careful with that. If the market does try to get some kind of bounce, I mean, we could see NEO attempts to follow because NEO is forming a bullish divergence, but not a guarantee. It could drop a little bit more to like 10.2 and then try to bounce, or it could technically bounce from here. We have this unfilled gap at 11.5. We could see NEO make its way up soon, but it really depends on what news comes out on Monday. It is still possible for NEO to drop lower despite forming this potential bullish divergence. It also formed a divergence right here, and yet it didn't bounce because we had a new piece of news. So we're going to have to be very careful. I either see it going down to like 10.2, then seeing some buyers stepping in from a technical standpoint, or it could try to bounce from here if it does not break below 10.6. If it starts pushing, you're going to be watching this thing try to fill this gap or get very close to gap resistance at about 11.3, if not 11.5. Those are all going to be very, very possible. So we're going to be watching these things very carefully and just watch these levels and be as calm, cool, and collected as possible. Now, in my video for tomorrow, I'm going to talk more about NEO, at least some other things going on with it, more specific details and what other investors are still doing. So I want to make this as clear as possible. NEO is not a dead cat in the water. It is not a horrible company. It's just that it's getting stuck in macroeconomic factors that are outside of its control. Okay, so I want to make that as clear as possible. If there's more bad news, we could see one more drop before I would be expecting some bounce soon anyways. Either drops a little bit more and bounces, or it just bounces from here. It really depends on the news. But I am anticipating a bounce soon, and I think NIO is very oversold. And very soon we're going to see some new updates involving their deliveries and such. We're actually just about less than 2 weeks away. All right, so thank you for listening. Have a great day, everyone. NIO to the moon as the long term is very bright, and peace out.